Hey everybody, it's Coach Andrew here. We've got another awesome episode of the Because Football podcast. For this episode, our guest is Coach Will Kemp. Coach Will has a lot of great information about how players can improve their technique, their skill. For coaches, there's a lot of good information as to how to approach working on your players' technique and improving their skill as well. And then we've got some awesome stories about a recent trip that he and some of his teams did to the UK, where they got to play matches against a lot of top English academy sides, go to some matches themselves, and do some stadium tours. So before we get into the episode, my question for you guys that I want to see in the comments: if you could visit the UK for a soccer tour, what stadium or which team would you want to see live? So go ahead and put that in the comments. I'm really excited to see where some of our fans and listeners of the show stack up. And I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Thanks. See you in there.
Today, we've got Coach Will Kemp of Kemp Soccer Development and Cohansey Soccer Club. And so first of all, Coach Will, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I appreciate you having me, Andrew.
The first thing here, just tell us a little bit about some of your earliest experience of the game.
Yeah, so fortunate for me, I grew up in a soccer town, Pittsburgh, New Jersey. My brothers played soccer, and of course, you want to go ahead and follow in their footsteps. My brother stuck with it for, not that long. We both quit pretty early on, picked up other sports, but it was the one sport that continued to grow on me. And of course, all my friends were playing it. So, once again, you adapt to your surroundings. Was able to have a lot of success at club level. A lot of success at high school. Did not have as much success inside college. I kind of relied too much on my talents compared to hard work. And then I transitioned into coaching. And I'm here. That's where I'm at today. So it's been a lot of fun. Crazy up and downs. But it's all been a enjoyable journey. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, ups and downs for sure. If you're in anything long enough, there's going to be those. Can you remember maybe like the first time you're like, I want to be a coach, like wanting to think eventually one day that you wanted to train players and develop them yourself?
Well, there was. Let me see. So one of my earlier coaches, actually his brother's name, the coach's name is Don Norton. So Don used to say that I was a student of the game. This is at an early age. I guess just from the conversations that we would have, but it was that one phrase that stuck with me for a good amount of time. And I never saw myself as a coach. I was a introvert. I still am an introvert. I struggle inside certain social situations, but same exact time I had a love for the game. And I actually, as soon as I remember in college where there'd be certain games and I'm trying to give instructions from the bench. I'm not even playing, right? And I'm just giving instructions from the bench. And I'll never forget, one of my teammates told me to shut up. And at that point, I was just like, hey, I love this game too much to shut up, and I want to be able to actually instruct as many players as possible and help as many people as I can. I can't be on the field, so I'm going to be able to help you out as much as I can. And, it kind of blossomed from there a little bit. I actually went to the golf business for 5-6 years. And then, I got a call from one of the old board members from my club, my hometown club, asking me if I wanted to coach rec. And, I'm like, I'm not really a coach, but I can give it a go if I can get back to my club. And, it kind of started from there, and rec turned into travel turned into, high level soccer. And here I am today.
Yeah. So from starting at rec, right? Like I had a lot of experiences like that myself, when you were like a 4-year-old who just wants to pick up the ball and run around, or the kids that are way more interested, like you set up all the cones and they just want to go kick them into smithereens or whatever. Like, What do you think you learned from your first initial coaching experiences at like a very young, like rec level, that is still relevant to your approach now with like high level club high school players?
Treat everybody as if they know nothing. And be able to show as much as possible. There was times where when I first started, I was just expecting everybody to know everything. And I used to get angry inside my head, like, how do you guys not know this? And I'm like, they're 4 years old. That's why they don't know it. And I remember having a bunch of training sessions thinking that I did a great job. And here comes the first game of rec. And I forgot to teach them how to do a throw-in. So it's those moments that, reminded me of, hey, I got to show everything, regardless of which level they're at, regardless of if they've been playing the game for years. And then once they know it, you got to challenge them. You got to challenge their brain. You got to help them develop. You got to help them actually have as much success as possible. And once you start to do that, that's when you start to actually do your job with a coach. So that's probably the one thing that stuck with me since day one.
From your experiences as a youth player in college, was there a certain coach or coaches that you feel like you wanted to like copy their style because they really connected with you, or like did you take elements of their approach and now put it in your coaching style today?
Yeah, so as a youth coach, my coach was Bob Norton, so Don's brother. And there was different pieces where Don and Bob were definitely way ahead of their time. A lot of the stuff that we did was possession based. We allowed ourselves to kind of dominate, especially into the midfield. And then as I went forward, high school coach, very, very different style of play. Let's put it that way. I was fortunate enough to be able to play with my best friends throughout, my 4 years. And especially our graduating class was 11 players. And out of those 11 players, we had probably about 8 players that have played at some capacity throughout their career. And then after that, went to my first school, and it was more of a South American, Central American style, which I absolutely loved. And then I transferred to last school, which is Rome, and it turned into more of the American style that we know, the dump and chase, and being able to use more of attributes of strength and speed compared to actually being able to solve problems with your mind. And
right,
I was able to go through several different types of coaches. But when I came out of school, I used my last experience as the way that I actually wanted to play at first. And it was just because you, once again, adapt to your environments. And I tried to go ahead and use, power and speed compared to, problem solving. But at the same exact time, obviously me being an Arsenal fan, you try to adapt to one of the best managers ever and be able to actually implement his system. So
sure,
I would say that, it was definitely at first a lot of my last college, and then a little bit of my favorite team. And then as I matured, it turned into more of a possession-based game. So that's kind of where I started to really transition into myself that I am now. And I was able to actually be a little bit more comfortable in my shoes because I grew up watching this. I understood it. I loved it. And now I can actually go ahead and actually, be myself compared to thinking that I have to go ahead and win every single game. And that's helped me out a lot. And once again, that's how I transformed into who I am today, just by realizing and kind of remembering where I came from and who I actually am.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me there is that like the changes, right? And I think I can see that in my own coaching journey. I think anybody, whatever the thing is that they love, that they apply themselves to, there's probably going to be some changes in your approach and philosophy over time. So I think that shows kind of like that you're always kind of assessing and being reflected, and reflecting, right? Being reflective and very, sometimes it's being very critical, right? And trying to see those changes. So, and you read my mind because I was about to ask, well, were you influenced by Arsene Wenger, right? And yet, of course, you're loved with Gunners. So if you could put in like a sentence or two, right? Like how would you describe that style of play and how it influenced your view of the game?
Well, when you have somebody that has changed the whole style of the way English Premier League is played in pretty much the entire world, I would just say extremely influential, beautiful style of play. Like that's what I see as Arsene. He's done so much for the game. He still does do so much for the game. But when you change your style of play, especially inside one of the most physical leagues in the world, now playing this beautiful, soft touch, being able to just really enjoy the game, like that's a stamp that you've made on the entire game that nobody will be able to take off of you. So, that's my vision of Arsene. And of course, he's a legend in my book. He's number one for me, and always will be number one.
Yeah, I mean the Invincible season. If you look at data, right, you have the Invincible season, which is even with all that Pep has done, haven't quite made a run like that. And then if you look at just you're saying like just from a philosophical point of view of influencing the game, it's been massive. And so kind of with that same era of time, when you were watching those Arsenal teams, like who were some of those guys that you're kind of looking up to as a kid and trying to style yourself after?
Well, I mean, obviously Henri is number one, without a doubt. I'm not I went from being a field player to a goalkeeper to being a field player, and I just remember this one time one of the best players I ever played high school soccer with. He was actually a senior. No, he graduated. I apologize. He's in school, college, and we played a pickup game, and I just never forget. He's like, "Dude, why are you trying to play like Henri?" I'm like, "I'm not. I'm just playing." And he's like, "Dude, you look exactly like Henri. Every single touch, every single movement." And I'm like, "I'm just playing the game," but like, that's just kind of how, like how I've looked up to him. And fortunately, I was able to see him play numerous times. And, that's the person that I think about first. And you also think about Dennis Bergkamp, right? You think about Cesc Fabregas. You think about, Thomas Rosicky, right? You think of Patrick Vieira, and, the list goes on. For those players, I'm not going to say like I was watching heavily inside the early 2000s because I wasn't. It was very hard to be able to watch the game, but
it was.
I grew up in,
you had to really go for it, and maybe you had to invest in like the direct TV packages.
Exactly.
Back in the day.
So so for me to say that, I was able to watch the, invincible eras before, like Ian Wright, and those guys. I'd be lying to you because I haven't. I've never seen Ian Wright play a match. But I know the history behind it, and I understand it, and I appreciate it because those guys paved the way for what Arsenal is today. And for me, like Thierry Henry, without a doubt, is the first person that comes to mind at all times when it comes to any type of Arsenal talk.
Yeah, super, just graceful, powerful, creative, like just the goal, like watching. He's one of those guys you just throw in like his best goals from Arsenal, and your jaw keeps dropping, right? And so many different types of goals too. But again, I kind of fit into that whole team style. And when I think of that Arsenal team, I mean, myself, I was a United supporter at the time, and they were always going head to head. But of course, like with that Arsenal team, it's just like with the way that they've kept the ball, and it's like technique, right? All those guys you're talking about, Bergkamp and Fabregas and Robert Pires, like just like effortless players, the ball just stuck to their foot. I'm curious with your thought as a coach and doing a lot of technical training with players. Do you think like, and maybe it's not a yes or no, but it's maybe degrees of it. Like, what can players do, and how much do you think a player can improve their technique when it comes to let's say, and they're starting out in the game and can barely trap a ball to like then being able to, like, do you think that each player has a particular ceiling or potential technically, or like do you think that can be expanded? How do you kind of see that?
Yeah, so it definitely can be expanded. Every single player, especially at a young age, can be molded into a great player, right? And it's obviously genetics play a huge part. Environment plays a huge part. But at the same exact time, everyone's getting the same opportunity. The one thing that I definitely am getting used to hearing that I really don't like to hear is that so many players are specializing early ages and they don't even know how to use their body yet. Right. So what I used to do, especially in training, I used to introduce the ball right away, ASAP, and be able to just like work on, like everyone did, like the 1,000 touch drill. Right. So that was pretty much my warm up. And it became so boring for me as well as the players that, people would show up for the session just like, they would lie about getting the drill done. They were like, "Oh yeah, I did it." And it just took away from the session. But for me, I had to change it. So I started to actually implement a little bit more speed and agility, change the direction stuff, jumping up and down, going to explosive movements, things like that. So I try to go ahead and focus more on actual body mechanics first compared to just technical work, right? So if you can get the player to understand their body, they're going to understand the ball. If they don't understand their body, there's no way in the world they're going to be able to understand the ball. So there's different techniques that I've actually implemented, especially over, I would say, the last 3 years that I started to introduce into my programs. And you just see players' ceilings actually raise. And you see players' ability and enjoyment actually, become higher because now they're doing something where they're actually accomplishing certain goals compared to just getting frustrated not being able to control the ball. So I think that everybody has an opportunity, but it's just how you actually use that opportunity. Get out there, learn how to use your body first, and then we'll go from there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, like of just the body mechanics, the control, because that's something I talk about a lot with my players anyway. And there's obviously only so much you can communicate that will then have the outcome that we're looking for in terms of growth and improvement. That's just like a talking and understanding, right? You can tell them to adjust in a certain way, and it can work in that like rote, unopposed exercise. But then once you increase tempo, increase the speed, I agree that like a lot of the body mechanics come into play. I think the challenge as a coach is when we look at players, whether we're doing a private one-on-one session for an hour once a week, or we're with our team and we have like 2 hour-and-a-half, 3 hour-and-a-half sessions a week or whatever it is. I always struggle with how to like give the right amount of time to the speed, agility, the body mechanics versus the ball, because I always just feel like there's such a scarcity of time for the ball and the technical side. So how do you try to kind of balance the two to kind of get the maximum outcome that you can, given the very limited time you have with your players?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's what I started to do is, about 25% of the session, I try to work on body mechanics, right? And then slowly not slowly, but then apply those same body movements into the first part of the session with the ball, right? That way they're still working on the same build. We're building for the same exact area. And then I go ahead and focus on just purely soccer technical stuff, et cetera, shooting, change of direction, match understanding. Why am I doing this move? When am I doing this move? How do I create things like that? So like I would say the first half hour is really focused on body mechanic. The first 15 minutes is more body mechanic, no ball. Sometimes I introduce the ball depending on the skill level, depending on the play, the age of the player, where they're at, so on and so forth. And then I go ahead and go for the next 15 minutes, similar movements, right? Changing direction, simple passing, receiving, up and back stuff, lateral movements, checking in the space, like things like that. Now they're applying all those body mechanics into the first little bit of movement. And then the last 30 minutes is more match understanding. Now, if you have a player that is struggling big time with just controlling the ball, you just dumb it down, right? You just bring it down to a situation where they're still having success, right? And then you go ahead and increase the intensity. It from the outside, it looks like the most simplest drill. But then when you're actually performing it, it's actually pretty difficult. So you try to go ahead and scale it based upon who you actually have, and then you make it challenging for whoever you're working with.
I like then how you tie in the theme and the topic of the physical side and the mechanics, and then even that progresses throughout the technical and the tactical activities. Really like that thread and that consistency there that you mentioned. So, and then I kind of like to look similar to that, right? Like we're looking at the technical training, or whether it's like private training for players. I know obviously you are the director of a travel club, and then you also offer a lot of additional supplemental skills training programs. So for players who are already training twice a week and games on the weekend for, let's say, 8-9 months out of the year with their travel team, like why is it important that they're doing additional programs, and can it really make an impact for them?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 3 hours a week of training for some players, right? 3 hours a week. You got so many days inside the year, and it just doesn't add up to actual development, right? So the players have to do things on their own, and they can do it on their own. They can get the wall in the basement, and then go outside. They can just literally just take shots. There has to be a supplemental somewhere, whether it's with a trainer that's going to give you direction, whether it's yourself that's actually going to give direction. I mean, YouTube has helped out so many players, right? Helped out so many coaches. Same exact thing with all the other social media aspects. But, at the same exact time, if a player or a parent thinks that they're going to have their kid develop, with 3 hours a week of training, they might learn something. They're going to be towards the bottom, but at the same exact time, there's so much opportunity for them to actually grow that they don't want to take, and they think that sometimes 2 nights a week is perfectly fine. It's more than enough, and they're going to go ahead and be the next player. And sometimes talent can go ahead and bring that player there, but it's going to phase out soon. Especially when you have players that are now doing, maybe 10 to 15 hours of training a week, and like obviously that's a lot, but at the same exact time they're putting in the work because they want to get there.
But I'm sure that a lot of your early soccer journey and mine as well, it was like on our own, right? Just us and the ball, a goal, whatever it is. What do you think is one of the most simple, like accessible things that players can do on their own that will have like the biggest impact in their improvement as a player?
Dribble a tennis ball around the house. That's it. That's your weaving in and out traffic, making sure you don't knock mom's vase over, making sure your dog doesn't take it away from you. You're picturing things inside your head. I mean, Nike made this amazing commercial way back in the day, but like obviously when we were younger, and it's Thierry Henry. Obviously I got to bring him up. He's dribbling through the house with a soccer ball. It's a Nike commercial, and he's picturing himself going against the best defenders in the world.
Yeah.
The commercial was over, and it's literally just his dog chasing him around the house. The neighbors are looking across the street like, what is going on over there? Like, why are you? And the dog's going crazy. And then he actually like kind of gets rid of the daydream, and it's just his dog going looking across at him like, okay, I'm going to take this ball with me. And then he drives into the next hallway. Like that's all that you need. And of course, you can go ahead and go outside. You can get the new program called Dribble Up, right? You can do a whole bunch of other stuff. But, if you're actually just having fun but just dribbling the tennis ball around the house, you're going to get better. Like that's the simplest thing that I can go ahead and recommend to any people. You don't need money. You don't need a bunch of space. You can even do this inside like a studio apartment. It doesn't matter. Like if you're touching the ball, you're getting better. If you're not touching the ball, you're staying the same.
Yeah. One thing I like about that approach too, which is something I did, and whether it's a tennis ball, it was always a hunt to find like a smaller ball that would make the least impact and would be the spongiest to not take out the video. Like you said, I definitely took out more than 10 picture frames. You can do so much just at home while you're waiting for the microwave to finish, right? Or you're sitting down on your phone, like whether it's just little things like working on your, technique. We talk a lot about with ball striking of locking our ankle and like just creating that muscle memory with your body, right? You can practice it when you're at school, sitting in the desk and everything. So I think if the imagination and like the passion is there, there's no limit to what can be your training and your practice.
Absolutely. But it comes down to the player, right? And you just it might seem boring at first, or you might see a situation where like, oh, this is stupid, but at the same exact time, you're getting touches on the ball. But it comes down to you. What are you envisioning? What do you actually want to accomplish? And everyone's capable. Just got to go out there and do it. Yeah. Just have fun with yourself.
Yep. Yeah. Just having fun and taking that action, I think, is big. What do you think? And I face this a lot with players, and I see it, and I'm sure you've seen it between the club and different levels. Like you talked a little bit about specialization too. You kind of hinted at a couple questions ago. What do you think about in like youth soccer and youth sports in general right now? Like what kind of contributes to burnout in players and kind of players losing that love or that passion for the game?
There's a lot of factors. Sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's coaches, sometimes it's a situation where you're not on a winning team, and you're getting hounded about it every single day. Like there's so many different things where burnout can happen. Obviously, you got the players that you got the theory of overtraining, and I do believe in overtraining to a point, but not to the point where you're not able to do something that's working on accessory skills or working on accessory muscles. But I think that burnout could be numerous things. Sometimes you just get in the car and you're so tired of mom and dad just going straight negative right away, and instead of just saying, "Hey, did you enjoy it?" "No, I didn't." "All right, what do you want to do now?" Like instead of just going to the next topic, like it's really difficult to kind of move forward from a negative place, or being able to actually understand that this feeling isn't here because of yourself. The feeling is here because of outside things. So I think that there's a lot of things that could turn into burnout. I see some kids that burn out from obviously overtraining, but it's not them that's training, if that makes sense. It's somebody else that's telling them you got to go outside and do this.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't want to lose the love for the game because somebody else is telling you to do something. If you lose the love of the game and you can do it and then it happens on your own, then it happens on your own. But if someone else is kind of pushing you away, I really don't like that. Like I said, definitely numerous things that could lead to burnout, but I think it's always outside influences.
Yeah, agreed. There's so much that goes into it. And is there anything you kind of like try to do or keep in mind with your programs or how the club does things to kind of keep an eye on burnout and try to reduce that, or what would you recommend to coaches?
Yeah,
Again, like you said, it's a lot, so it's not all within
yeah.
the coach's control. But again,
hmm
as far as like really, really caring for the well-being of the child, like what do you kind of look for and do to kind of reinforce that?
Well, I think building rapport with players is huge, right? Try to get a little bit of a peek on the inside of their life outside of soccer, and see how they actually operate, right? And see what their relationships are like, with close friends, with family members, so on and so forth. And then try to tap into little things, and then you try to say, hey, listen, like, how was your day today? What did you do? Blah blah blah. And as those conversations continue to grow, you're starting to actually add little post-its inside your head about what this person's talking about, and
Hmm.
then you try to go ahead and touch on happiness and see their reactions to, oh, I played video games today. I was really good. Like, or hey, like, I got my high score and whatever. Or hey, I really enjoyed watching my sister's recital the other night. Like just small things, and then you're making post-it notes and then trying to bring up those topics again and seeing the way they react, right? So I try to make sure that if I see a player that's struggling big time, I interact with them even more. If I see a
Hmm.
player that one hasn't scored inside, 5 or 6 games and they're down on themselves, like they're reaching that level of burnout failure, not just burnout, but just burnout from failure, right? Because they're expecting themselves to score every single game and they
Yeah.
haven't. So then you try to go ahead and interact with them a little bit more. So for me, what I started to implement this last year, my higher level teams, the 2011 team, we actually train 3 nights a week. And I started to change the way that that I train. So the first night, open play. You guys create the games. You guys do this. You guys pick the teams. There'll be a little bit of structure here and there. And if it's a
Hmm.
stupid game, I'll manipulate it, right?
Yeah.
But like if it's a game where it's just like, hey, open play, you guys playing 2v2 tonight, you guys playing 5v5. We're gonna work on this with some bumper players today. You guys make the restrictions, and we'll go from there. That gives them that freedom back of when you're a kid and you're no longer getting haven't been in that structured environment, and they start to kind of fall in love with it again, right? And then next night, we'll do some more structured stuff, and the last night is more like tactical stuff and a little bit of structure, but then you add the freedom back, right? And then now you see that they're actually prepared and excited for the weekend compared to being beat down the entire time. So
Yeah.
I've changed the way that I've coached based on that, and I've
Hmm.
seen it, and it actually worked. It's worked out a lot for that squad because there were some ups and downs. This last season was actually really bad, but we're playing against some of the best teams inside the region. But that's just the level that we're at right now, and it's fortunate. But like I said, that's helped out a lot, especially when it comes to burnout, because now players are being able to express themselves more compared to just being structured training the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I like about too is like you're giving them the freedom to like make those decisions, right? Because like when it comes down to like the kids, they know how to have fun, right? Like
Yeah.
they know they know what is going to be enjoyable for them. And then as coaches, we can just kind of like you said, if it's a stupid game, you're going to step in, you're going to adjust it. Like we need to be in safe
Yep.
and improving from this. But I think that and it sounds like it would be something that really makes them think about the game as well.
Mm. Absolutely. And they're problem solving themselves, right? So now there's no longer a voice on the sideline that's screaming at them or
Yeah.
yelling
Yeah.
instructions, and mom and dad aren't there. And you see those kids at their happiest. Yeah, they're losing. Yeah, they'll argue. Yeah, they're competitive. But at the same exact time, they figure it out on their own. They sort it out. But when you constantly have that voice at all times, boom, 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 right? It's like beating into them, and
Yeah.
there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance, and that's where the balance comes from. Hey, full freedom. You guys go ahead and have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking of having fun, we'll pivot a little bit here. I know just recently, a couple months ago, through your Kemp Academy teams, you took some groups over to the UK. So tell us a little bit about that experience and some of those international tours that you've done in the past.
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, this past April was definitely up there for, I would say, top 3 tours I've been on. Great group. We took 2 teams between the ages of 2009 to 2011. We had a lot of players. A lot of players brought their family members to be able to see them play over there. We traveled and explored the country. We had a little bit of a bump in the beginning where a storm slowed us down for about 4 hours. And we actually missed one of our first adventures, which was a Manchester City tour that we had to bump to it later in the day and later in the week, which was great. But it was a great experience. It was an experience where played against Manchester United, played against Tranmere Rovers, played against Bolton Wanderers, and this absolutely unbelievable team, Connors Key, which in Wales, and they were phenomenal. Being able to play against Ian Rush's nephew was absolutely amazing. Liverpool legend, and the boys are just having fun. Obviously we got beat up a little bit. I was expecting Manchester United to kind of smash us, but we stuck with them. We lost that game. I think it was what was the score? I think it was 4-3, something like that.
Okay.
Connors Key, we lost, I think, 9-1. They were just unbelievable team. And then Bolton Wanderers did very well against them, which is a good team. It's actually a player from Manchester City's academy just got released, and Bolton Wanderers picked him up, and he was very, very good. It was a great experience overall. I mean, players took some of those things that they learned over there, brought them back over here. The aggression was very high. But the team unity was just on a different level. That was the biggest thing that I wanted them to bring back, and they brought it back here, right? Obviously, seeing the Premier League matches, going to Old Trafford, watching Rashford play extremely well.
Yeah.
For myself, I snuck away. I've been able to watch the Arsenal-Liverpool match away at Anfield. A dream come true. Liverpool fans were extremely quiet until they started scoring. The library in there. Just really good stuff. Went to Wrexham, of course, explored there for a little bit, and made some really strong relationships. So it was a really good trip.
Awesome. And what was the age of the group that you took over?
So it was players. So it was two teams. One team was 2009 and 2010 combined team. And the other team was all 2011.
Okay, gotcha. And then you kind of hinted towards a little bit. I'm curious, looking at Premier League academy side, or at least championship, and I think Bolton's League One now, but still quality academy side of things. You mentioned the aggression, right? What do you mean by that? What did you see kind of in matches and games that would show that that was a difference that maybe the American group that your guys had to adapt to?
Yeah, so I mean, over here, right, players are playing for obviously, the dream of playing professional is always there, but it's not in reach, right? Going D1, getting a full ride scholarship, it's everyone's dream, right? But it's not in reach. So over here, you have players who have this dream that's not actually there for them. So they play based upon what they deserve to play, right? And then there's certain players, I'm not saying every single player is like that, but there's certain players that will try to, think that they deserve something when they really don't. Over there, those players are playing for contracts, right? They're playing for contracts. They're trying to go ahead and get into the first team. So every single moment is being watched. Every single moment is an opportunity for them to move into the next team, right? The next level. So when I say about aggression is that whoever has the ball, I'm taking it away from you. I will fight you tooth and nail to win this ball away from you. I'll be clean, right? And I'll be professional because every single one of those kids are extremely professional. They got fouled, they got up, slapped hands, kept going, let's go. Right. But they're all playing for contracts, and with that type of mentality, it's very hard to compete against with a country a culture where it's just like, I want to play pro. It's nice. It's nice to hear that. It's nice to say that. That's what you want to hear. It's expected. Everyone's expected to see it, but it's not in reach, right? But over there, everything is in reach, right? And I'm not saying every single player is going to go pro because it's not true at all, but it's in reach. It's right there in front of them. They can take it if they're good enough. They can take it if they have the opportunity to. So that's the biggest thing that I say about aggression is that they're competing at a very high physical level at all times. They want to run through. They don't want to be embarrassed, especially when it comes to Americans. They want to be able to dominate you physically and mentally. And that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, and like you're saying, there's that clear pathway, and there's decades of the culture of this, and hey, it is possible if I do this. And like you said, we just have a younger infrastructure in the U.S. and it's newer and it's also changing a lot. And then there's also a lot of different levels and things. Of course, then there's college too, but that's different than like the possibility of, a livelihood for yourself or for your family. So that's interesting. You're kind of bringing out that point. Do you think that that's something? I'm sure you talked about your guys. Like, how do you think that and like being exposed to that type of mentality change maybe the way they approach their own game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was definitely a huge understanding, especially at first. It was like, wow, but like the Manchester United game, the boys play with a lot of confidence, right? A lot of like, oh, we can stick with this team, we can bounce it around. But it's still the beginning of the trip wasn't as good as the end of the trip. And the reason why is because they finally adapted to the play style. They finally adapted to the actual, lifestyle of these players, and they started to become overly aggressive. And when you have certain players, especially with our last match, that are complaining to the referee about how physical this team is now being, you can see that something is clicking, right? And then I remember when we came back, we didn't have a game that following weekend. We had to wait. And we played 2 weeks after that, and the aggression was very high, and they kind of were, overcompensating for other things, which was unfortunate because they wanted to prove something. At the same exact time, the style of play was poor again, right? And I think it was a rainy day, whatever. I think we lost that game, but the boys were just on a different level of aggression, and then they finally found a good balance towards the end of the season. And now, like where we played inside this last tournament, they're playing 11v11 for the first time. We're playing against some of the better academies inside the state, and they won the tournament. So like it was not going to happen right away, but it was going to happen eventually. And now they're applying it every single training session, every single match, and I'm so proud of them.
What did you guys get into as far as your cultural activities and sightseeing?
So I think the first day we traveled to the hotel, but we ended up going to a beautiful countryside called Chester. It's pretty much Roman. I think it was like a
I've been to Chester. I think
yeah. So it's a beautiful place. You see castles all around, and then we ended up going to, like I said, sightseeing inside. To not a stadium tour, but we went to Wrexham, got some stuff there. Some of the other stuff that we did was Manchester City tour, Chelsea tour. Some people, went off on their own to do a Liverpool stadium tour. But we explored throughout Liverpool. We were there for a few hours. Went to Manchester, explored there for a few hours. Actually, no, we stayed in Manchester, but explored out in Manchester for a few hours. Of course, London. People went to, Big Ben, London Tower, all the major sites. And some people then we went to St. George's Park, which is a beautiful facility, England's National Training Center.
Right.
We actually did a recovery session with them. We worked out in the same space that the English national players worked out at, which is pretty cool because you see Marcus Rashford's name on the board about the times that he got, Harry Kane's name on the board, Declan Rice, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, their training pitch was under construction, but it's the most perfect pitch ever. But their indoor facility was really nice as well. It's one of the only places in the world you can actually do an indoor Champions League match at. So which is really cool. But yeah, we went throughout the entire country, and I think that stuff is so much more important than just playing the games. Just because 90% of those kids will never go back to that country again. They might in the future, but for the most part, that they're not going to be able to actually explore those areas that they would like to. So, it's not just a soccer trip, because it's not just based upon that, but it's about actual, cultural understanding and being able to go to those historical sites. So, yeah, it was fun, man. A lot of fun.
Awesome. And did you organize this yourself, or who hooked you guys up with this?
Yeah, so my one of the good friends of mine, Barry Love, works for a company called EPL Sports. He's the one who actually put all this stuff together. Executed it. We talked about the plan together, how we wanted to go ahead and build it. It could have been just soccer only. It could have been where it's just like a few matches here and there. But I made sure that it was something where the players and families could really enjoy, because a lot of players brought their family members, not just mom or dad, or mom, dad, grandpa, grandmom, cousin,
Wow. Yeah.
and you want to be able to kind of have them enjoy it as well, because you don't want them just going just to watch, their granddaughter play or grandson play. You want them to be able to actually explore the country as well. So, I was fortunate enough to be able to meet Barry a few years ago, or actually probably about a decade now. And we built a great relationship. He does amazing work, and we were able to build a great tour together.
And that bridges into like kind of the cause football aspect, right? Like what the game kind of means for us individually and things. So if I had to put you on the spot, could you pick a favorite, or it doesn't have to be the number one, but like a top memory related to the game?
It's tough. It's tough. There's so many memories there. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. But I mean, I don't know. I really don't know off the top of my head the number one memory. But I mean, if you're gonna say, because football, wow, this is definitely tough. But there's so much that's going through. But I would say this, because football, I'm able to provide happiness to many of players. It's me going out of my comfort zone, as I told you before, me being an introvert, and then being able to actually bring smiles to players' faces and families. And when you have a kid who scores a game-winning goal and runs up to you, not his friends, and gives you a big hug, like that's more meaningful than any type of trophy, right? Or any type of accolade when it comes to like a coaching license or job, like whatever. Like that's more important than anything else. And if somebody can come out there and get away from all the stresses that actual life brings you, and you can forget about that, then that's all that I really care about. If I can make someone smile one time, just from this game, and then that's the reason why I do it.
Awesome. It's a great answer. And the game brings so much joy, and excitement, and those beautiful moments of like triumph and competition. And it's a lot. I agree. It's a lot and tough answer. But I thought you summed it up really well. So we'll wrap everything up there. And thank you again, Will, so much for joining us, for sharing about your background in the game, your philosophy and experiences. And we really appreciate it. And hope to have you on again sometime again in the future.
Absolutely, Andrew. I appreciate it, my friend.
And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.